We are so excited today, Q. I'm so excited about today. We've got a guy that I've grown to be a good friend with in a very short amount of time. I've become a very good friend with with Roberto, and I'm so excited to get his story out here. Are you ready for this, man? Are you totally ready?
I am strapped in, ready to go, just like the Tesla that you have that goes 2.4.
0 to 60, yeah.
Yeah, man. But this right here is going to take our listeners' mindset to the exact same
2.4
speed.
seconds to 0 to 60.
I'm excited about this one. This is good.
So again, I'm going to open it up and say here, I'm so blessed to be this nutty networking guy that I am, because I fall into amazing relationships with giving, loving people, and this guy's an example of that. But I'm going to tell the quick story. I didn't know anything about Doc until I sat down invitedly. I sat down next to Laura Ingram and Ray, her sidekick, right? She was speaking at Turning Point USA, where my heart is really involved in Turning Point USA, as you guys know, and she was relaxing with their sidekick Ray at a nice restaurant bar area. And I saw her there, so what do? I sit down next to him, right? Hey, they got to know who I am, right? Somehow. And so I sit down next to him, and boy, Laura and Ray Laura is something else. I mean, she is such an amazing person. I just listening to her on TV, I liked a lot of what I heard, but boy, sitting next to her, she's so compassionate and she's so doggone sharp, and she does not hold back. She says exactly what's on her mind. I love that about people that just say what's on their mind. But so we got telling our stories, right? Her story and her adopting kids, and Ray's story and family, and my story. And I always tell people that I meet about my wife's brain cancer, because I know there's people thinking differently out there, and I want to expose this challenge that we have to every opportunity possible. And so when I tell people about who I am and this amazing wife I have, I mention the brain cancer because I want to know if there's anything else out there, right? So sure enough, I mention it to Laura and Ray, and Laura says, you've got to meet my friend, Dr. Roberto. She says, Gary, I sympathize with you because I've got a friend of mine that passed away of brain cancer who I loved, and Doctor did some amazing things for him. And so you got to meet him because Cheryl would love to meet him as well. And so sure enough, that's how it started. And she made a call to Doc, and boy, he got back to her, and we started a conversation that lasted a couple hours on the phone shortly after that, and soon after, Doc is looking to try and fly out to Chicagoland area to meet Cheryl and I. Cheryl mostly. He found out it wasn't that exciting to meet me, but to meet Cheryl was awesome. And so he did, and we got to be good friends. And since then have gotten a little closer to Doc, and it's been a blessing for me to be this big mouth networking guy that gets to meet great people. This is another one of those examples. So, Doc, welcome to Ditch Digger CEO, and we're excited to tell your story and dive deep and let America know the fun you're having and what happens to people that really are passionate about what they do. So, welcome.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure. It's really a pleasure to be here with you and the people that you connected. So I think this is a fantastic program that you have, and that network reminds me about how our own brain works, always with synapses. And synapses makes the connections and brings information. Mm-hmm. And that is very powerful for growing. And so this is a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And Doc, we like to start with your story, right? Where you grew
Perfect.
up, your parents and the surroundings you had, and how your young mind developed into this awesome character that you are today. So can you start from there?
Yes, well, my name is, I am Roberto Trujillo. I always love to say I'm a Mexican-American. I had the privilege to have these two beautiful words that I was born in Mexico. I grew up in the United States and become this beautiful state of mind, being an American. And so I think when I tell about my life, I am the oldest of three brothers. My youngest brother passed away a few years ago, so we only have two brothers left that I have. So my mom is, I was born by accident in Mexico City. My parents, they both come from the small village. And so then they met in Mexico City, they stayed there, and 5 years later, I moved to the small village, a small town that didn't have So kind of has been an adventure for me because it was, my mother is one of the persons who actually perhaps I admire the most. Is my role model because even though she didn't go to school, she only went to 1 year elementary school.
Wow.
And my father went to 6 year elementary school, and that's the whole education.
Wow.
So so I know when people ask me, how come this small little village boy went to Harvard University and become now the chairman and the CEO of NeuroCytonix, the new corporation that we try to change the world to cure the incurable. So and I think I started because when I was very young, I always believed that sometimes at some point in our lives we find our mission, the reason why we're here. And always I tell people, I think medicine I never chose medicine. Medicine chose me. So when I was 3 years old, I already learned how to read and write. And I think in that moment, my mother used to tell me that I wanted to be a doctor. So I started very early in schooling. So at the age of 16, basically, I began medical school in Mexico. So I was very young. And so my parents coming from the small village, so they, went to the city, and I find out when I was in the city, when I started my classes, one of the things happened at that time is that I could not get how to return home. There was no buses, nothing. So then I was like, oh my goodness, how can I do this? So anyway, so I for serendipity in life, one of my cousins got an accident. I went to see him in that city, and the doctors were taking care of them. When I was in college, they were my professors. So I asked them that I am already a medical student, that I would love to be a voluntary in that hospital. If I can do, as soon as I finish my classes, I can go back and start, learning, do something. But, but the other thing, people didn't know that I didn't have a house to live.
Oh, man.
So then that place became my house. So for that year, I lived for 5 years in that hospital. So you can imagine for a 16-year-old kid, he was like in heaven, seeing all these patients, having so much learning from experience. And in fact, I did, of course, this is teaching hospitals where they are supervising by residents and directors, but still you have a lot of chance to get exposed to medicine. And so because it happened also, I don't sleep too much. I only sleep 4 hours a day. So for me, it was, I could work a lot of things. So I started to deliver the first baby when I was 16. 17 years old, I did my first C-section.
What?
And because I was there, I basically kind of like in the practice, I basically specialize in 3 different fields, in obstetric and gynecology, and anesthesia, and general surgery. And I did a lot of the procedures. So when I was 20, when I graduated, I already know so much medicine. And in fact, that's the reason in a private practice, I support myself to study, because at the age 12, as you can see, my parents could not pay me for anything. So I have to work in my own for being, for every day to see what is my next life and what is this. So I think Mexico at that time was one of the great resources for me to become very important, to understand about the importance of seeing patients, the importance for my compassion for the people. And I realized a lot of things is how myself, if I can be better for the people, is because I need to train much better. And so, but one thing, and as being in the hospital, I have learned that the small books or journals that the hospital they have, they all were written in English. So actually, can you imagine that my parents, they thought that the whole world, they only speak Spanish. There was no other languages around the world.
Sure.
So they never exposed myself to my brothers and me to go to a school and to learn English. So, but then as soon as I knew that I have to learn English, and I knew that the United States is the most important country in the world for medical research. And so being so close to the United States, so I was able to do a rotation in Texas as the first time. So I already learned how medicine gets practiced in medicine in the United States.
And by the time you did a rotation in Texas, how old were you then?
I was 18 years old. So I saw one of the professors that came to Texas to Mexico, and I went to talk to them. I said, "Listen, can I? My name is Roberto Trujillo. I am number one in the school. Can I have a rotation? Remember in the 80s." There was no internet, no
Yeah.
no WhatsApp, none of these technologies.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, they asked me to come to the rotation.
Can you tell us, Doc, about when you're 16 years old in a school in Mexico City? I think you said, is that right?
It's in Mexico State. Mexico State.
Okay, Mexico State. Okay, so that school you went to, how is it different than today when a 16-year-old first can get admitted to a school like that and actually start learning about medicine at that age? Because in America that can't happen, right? So tell us about the difference in Mexico back then and America maybe today.
Yes. So the way in Mexico, normally what happened is the training in medical school is a little different. We have more the European tradition that after you finish high school, you go directly to medical school for 7 years. And then after you go 7 years, then you do a residency training and you do more extra years. So at the end, it's equal to the education in the United States. United States, you finish, you start in high school, college, 4 years, and then you go 4 more years for medical school. So total is 8 years.
Yes.
So the average students, when they don't miss any years, usually they begin at 19 years old. 18 years old, finish high school.
Yep.
They begin medical school, and they go for 7 years, 6 to 7 years, depending on the program.
Sure.
My program was 7 years, so that's how. But I was still 2 years younger than most of the people in Mexico. So, and especially, I am not too old. I think I was getting my, changing all my mind and the changes. I am very small person, so.
So you look like you're like 12 or 13 when you're 16.
Exactly, that's correct. Believe me.
Well, yeah.
I have so many stories because when I was in the operating room, I have my mask and the people don't see me. And I did this surgery and did that. So then after the patient saw me, who is this kid?
What did he just do to me?
Why deliver the baby? I said, how are you doing? Oh my God, your voice is the same, but you're a kid. I want to see you.
Well, the other thing I got a kick out of you when we talked about this. So my son Nick, who you played golf with last weekend, and I love so much, right? He's a small guy, and he embraces his size. He loves it. He's 5'4", 5'5", and he embraces it. He loves the fact that he's that tall. He talks about all the advantages, right? And I love that he embraces who he is, right? Well, I mentioned to you about his size, and you said, what'd you tell me about what you said when it came to sleeping in the hospital? You could sleep anywhere, right? In a chair or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So no. Yeah. Tell me about the advantages you had as a young kid in that hospital and.
Yeah, so I think that was fantastic during that time because so one of the things is I was mentioned to you that I don't sleep as much. Mm-hmm. So when the residents or the interns, they were so tired, so I used to come. I said, "Can you please teach me how to do it?" And I do it. You go to sleep. I will take care of the patient. Or is any the note I need to write how the record is located? Let me write it for you. I will do it. Just teach me. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was like I was this little sponge that I just wanted to learn everything about medicine.
Right.
But one of the things two things very important for me is that so in the first year, I started medical school. One of the residents had trained in a U.S. program in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So he has over 40 books, and he became an orthopedics specialized. So he said to me, "Roberto, I cannot take all my books. I would like to sell it to you." I mean, he was more symbolic selling to me. And they said, the only problem is that they are in English. They're not in Spanish. They go, okay, that's fine with me. So I inherited 40 books in the first year of medical school. Wow. And all what I have to do is go to the store, get an English-Spanish translation, a dictionary, and so then I had my reading about medicine in English, and somehow destiny it is because I knew that I would be living in the United States. I just knew that. It was in my heart. So, but in a way, it can sound interesting because my books that I read, even though it was in a Spanish program, everything I was writing in English, everything that I couldn't speak, obviously. So I only learned English when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
So that what happened. And the other nice story that happened to me that time is that when I was invited to come to Baylor College of Medicine for the first time as an exchange student, so they accepted me actually, but then there was no scholarship. So here is another situation, a challenge.
Yeah.
But one of the things for me, always challenges for me, I said to people, listen, challenges are basically opportunities for you to grow.
Absolutely.
And so because my life was, for instance, I was 12 years old, I have to work in many jobs, many things to support myself, went to school, to pay scholarships, to pay all these things, plus some scholarships that was given to me. It was great. So, but anyway, so I have my letter. So I went to see my president of the university, and I said, listen, I've been accepted as in the first time in the history of my school to come to United States. So can you help me with any scholarships? He says, well, I will give you a ticket. So, and then, it's always good to do, because for me, scores in schooling was never important to me. Always I found that you should know or you don't know. So for me, always I scored basically all my life. I was number one in my school. My mom used to have that. Always she has diplomas, number one. But what I was telling her, the importance is important, because when you are the number one in your class, you receive a lot of awards for that. They open opportunities for scholarships, especially when you don't have too much money. Anyway, so I have my tickets, but so I said to the president, can you please, because I knew that the presidents of universities, they know to the governors of the states. So I asked them, can you give me a letter of recommendation to see the governor? Because I want to ask for the next scholarship. So I went to see with my letter to the governor. I say, hey, listen.
So governor of Texas at the time?
No, that was the governor of my state in Mexico.
Oh, Mexico. Okay.
Yeah, because I was coming for the first time to Texas.
Okay, so you need a recommendation.
So then, exactly. So I have came to Texas, and I went to see my governor of the state of Mexico.
Yeah.
And I told, of course, he didn't receive me, but he sent me to his secretary of education, and I had the opportunity to have an interview, and I explained the situation, why it's so important that I need to open new ways, because for improve the medicine even in Mexico, if we have more people to be trained, especially the United States is the number one in the world of medicine, it will be better for us. So I can open the doors for more exchange, and I can have more mentors in the United States to train us.
Sure.
So I only asking you for this. In fact, I asked him for $200, and he actually gave me like $600 scholarship for being 5 weeks in Texas.
Wow.
I was so happy with that, Anyway, so that is part of what I see as that's always I find that then of course as soon as I finished medical school, I came to United States. One part of my life that I really always has been in my mind is, and I really kind of love this area of medicine. All part of medicine is fantastic, but my inclination, my passion in medicine is to study the brain. And the reason why is because I remember in my first classes in medical school, they had told me that once the brain is damaged, there is no repair. And always I ask, why? Why? All the organs can repair it somehow, but why the brain is not? And they say, it's the dogma. That's it. There's no more to say. And so I say, one day, I'm going to make the difference. I have to do the difference. So when I went through medicine, through all these 14 departments, I learned so much about medicine. And I did a lot of surgery. So my initial thought was, I want to become a neurosurgeon. So I came to Baylor. I did my internship in medicine. I did in clinical neurology. And when I was there with this program, so I spent 4 years in Texas Medical Center. So I went to meet the chairman of the University of Texas, Dr. Philip Gildenberg, who was an MD PhD from University of Pennsylvania. So he was in Texas, and at that time we were in the AIDS epidemic. So we had to do a lot of surgery, a lot of training, but there was always, one thing in the brain. Sometimes, basically, there is no cures for neurological problems. There is a few diseases you can control in the brain, but there is nothing really to do. So, but then I did elective 1-year neurosurgical training, and I did a lot of surgery with him. But I realized there was nothing really major thing I could do. It's so limited, the medicine, especially surgical medicine in the brain. If you have access to a tumor, you can remove a little bit. If you cannot remove it completely, you cannot do anything. There are certain diseases, of course, the hemorrhage that have access to that, you can do it. But then in general, there is no more that we can do. So I didn't see myself in 40 years of my life being a neurosurgeon. And then when I tried to do the neuro part, I already in my 2 years fellowship in clinical neurology, I basically learned so much about neurology. So it's like, I will not be a clinical neurologist either. So I was kind of in a process that, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have a little crisis. But then being in the United States, and I realized how important it is to do the research. I said, if anything, I can help people. I have to become a researcher as well as medical, as an MD. And so that's the reason why I grew in my first time in my mind to be a PhD. So that's the next chapter of my life. So I got through the National Cancer Institute or the National Institutes of Health of the United States, and a scholarship that was almost $500,000 to come to Boston. And I came to Harvard, and is where I did my next chapter of my life, Boston, Massachusetts. So it was so during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, so I have thought that maybe if I study the brain and I study how a virus enters into the brain, because AIDS virus causes so much damage in the brain. And I wanted to become a specialized in the brain and also in human virology to understand more of these bugs, how they enter into our brain.
Right.
So I came to Harvard, and I wanted to become a neurovirologist, but they say that specialty doesn't exist. Okay, I said, can I do 2 PhDs at Harvard? I want to become a neuroscientist and a human virologist. Says, no, you cannot do 2 PhDs at Harvard. I go, okay, so what can I do? Anyway, so I think what they suggested to me to train in the 2 fields. So I have this fantastic program with MIT, Harvard, and I became the first molecular neurovirologist at Harvard. And that was fantastic because all my mentors became my friends, and I created this network that we can help to prevent diseases. And so Boston, that was another part of my life. I was as early faculty, and my whole time was 15 years that I was in Massachusetts. So it was fantastic time for that.
So Dr. Roberto, I man, you're saying some amazing things in here, and I think there's a whole embodiment of one of the, I guess you can call it the success traits that I see in you. Well, 2 of them actually is desire and then going the extra mile. Like, you have a desire to make things great. Like, nothing can stop you. And also when it comes to business, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, they want to do something just to make a quick buck, but they don't have the desire to go that extra mile, so to speak. And it seems like you have that. And because of that, you've had some success in what you've done. I wanted to ask you, like, when it comes to the people that you either mentor, the people you meet with, even the people that's in your business, or even the people that you may see that may ask you questions, what are some components of desire or going the extra mile that you feel today's generation probably doesn't have or needs to be implemented into?
Yes, I think this is a very, very important question when you ask me, because I think always I have said to the people, one of the most important things is to have passion what you want to do. without passion, without love, what you want to be, like say, you know, if no one can pay you anything, and if you want to do something that you want to, you know, wake up in the morning, and that's the one thing you think about it, and make it that happen, you know, this is, I think, is a very, very important thing. Is the number one is passion. The second thing I think is important is the training. And I think oftentimes we have to be very careful because the study is not everything. In fact, a study is just one component to get the skills. And in my business is medicine and science. So you have to go to the MD, PhD in order to understand our business. And so to have education with purpose. And that, I think, is very important. And I really reflect in my life. And I feel this is so critical that you need to be educated. But like oftentimes, for example, my son, who is in the, you know, finished college, got a master's degree in business. And he says, Pop, I don't need to do a PhD to do business. Business you do by working. Every day you have to do that. And business needs to be this part. And so that's, I think, is a very important, that only to be education with a purpose. And the last part, what is important, how can these ideas, this education, the skills that I bring to my brain, how can I help the people? And that's when the business comes along. You have to bring the product to society. And doing that, you do the business. And you know, when you don't even think about the business per se, but it's a natural, because when there is a problem, we require solutions. And solutions brings, you can invent a medical device, you can have a new medicine or a new thing, and that you have to do as a business. And because, I mean, I respect everybody who likes only to stay in academia or in private practice. But when I see in all the gifts that God has given to me in life, you know, I found so important. That's why in the last 8 years, I became more an enterprise in the biotechnology business, because this is the only way we can deliver the fastest as we can our solutions to our population. And that's, for example, what NeuroCytonix is doing right now. But that's, I think, this is the three components. Number one, you have to have passion what you do. Second, you have to educate it with a purpose. Don't go extra if you don't need to. And of course, the last one is to bring the solution, go into the business, because that's the only way we can even improve our lives. But also indirectly, you can get so many jobs to people. You've been training, and I will explain to you some of the ideas that I have. How can we, in fact, we're going to having a new opportunity in science, it brings more new specialties, new jobs, new areas like that. So this is a very important, these three components, in my personal opinion.
That's awesome.
So when you think about what you've gone through, right, from academia to entrepreneurship, think about America and how America has in your opinion been a force for the world to do good, and what you're experiencing now from being a Mexican American coming here and that now working in India, working in Mexico, and all the different places of the world that you're doing your trials and all your work, Doc. You know,
yeah.
What do you feel like? What's the advantage of America to the rest of the world, and why is it so important that we remain this great free enterprise engine?
Yes, I think this is a very important question, because oftentimes my colleagues, American colleagues who know only the United States, oftentimes they even complain about why we don't have too much money. And I say, oh my God, you don't realize, the only country in the world who has, for example, this fantastic program that the National Institutes of Health organize. We have over $39 billion every year. It supports a lot of academia, a lot of research, and this is very important for bringing new young people into new ideas moving forward. Many, many countries, they don't have a program. Not even the whole Europe have programs like we have in the United States. This is number one. Mm-hmm. And also, oftentimes also the training, the postgraduate training is very, very strong in the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's the training, it's the support for that part. The one thing is still the United States actually still is missing, but this is coming as a new word, is in the new field that you translate the science immediately to the public. Well, the reason I am saying that is the following. Like when I was in Boston, over 100% of the research, less than 5% of the research really translate to the products immediately to society. And a lot of the academia which is very important. I am not saying it's not important, because I was in academia, I published papers, because our idea is that in future we find solutions. But oftentimes you get stuck in academia, you work in grants and papers, and you can be even decades. And yet the solutions can be very slow, because there is not the purpose of bringing that.
Sure.
But having the infrastructure of United States have of supporting the research, supporting the great centers in academia are very important. But what I think what United States also does in an amazing way is, if you have an idea you want to do in business, people embrace. It's so easy to embrace that technology. In other countries, that experience I have in Europe and Asia and India and Mexico, is very difficult.
But how about the challenges, though? I know that you're doing your research in India and next in Mexico, right? And you're not doing it in America. I mean, what holds you back from being able to do this research and these trials in America, where where these ideas are, many of them coming from a great entrepreneur like yourself?
Oh yeah, well that's Gary. I think this is another good question. But I think before you ask me this question, I think I need to make a statement, because the new as the chairman of the NeuroCytonix Corporation, what we have is a medical device that doesn't give side effects, and it's a regeneration medical device that we are making that happen. And this medical device, very unique in its type, has nothing in the world. Any other group has invented something like this. It was invented by a scientist in India, Dr. Raja Kumar.
Okay.
So Dr. Raja Kumar is from Bangalore, India, from the south of India. And so I have met this fantastic genius 5-6 years ago. So when I met him, he has this medical device, I have learned that through these frequencies without side effects, and it's an amazing technology, he can grow cells from the cartilage. As we get older, we can have problems in our knees. So that cells from the cartilage, which is called chondrocytes, but those cells, after that, cannot regrow. So he figured out the way that through a software system, and you go enter into this tunnel, and we measure exactly, given that frequency, it can grow the knees again, and the people do not need surgery anymore.
That's unreal.
This is unreal. I mean, I was for especially for my background, and I spent also a few years in the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke in NIH, and I work also part of the science in this 3 decades in academia. I have never seen something like this. And this comes from the field of physics, from biomedical engineering, and it's different from my background. So this is an invention unique because happened that was in India, okay? So when I asked the question, if you can do that with the knees, can we do that with the brain? And so then we began that with that question. I began the program to try to treat patients with Alzheimer's disease, with Parkinson's, with a stroke, with children with autism, and children with cerebral palsy. And so because the technology happened to be in India, was not born in the United States, and we start to do like we call index studies, just the proof of concept to see if this technology can work. And when I find out that it works, my first thing has been so I create this corporation in the United States, and we have to do the whole ABC for medical devices. And when I say ABC, what means that we need to get the approval by organizations in different countries, and the one gold standard organization in the world is the FDA. So the Food Drug Administration is the most rigorous organization, but once you have approved by this organization, you actually can go around the world.
Anywhere in the world after that.
Anywhere in the world, exactly. So here it is. So I had this great idea, This is the most amazing, in my experience, cutting-edge science that can change the world, can change medicine. But also, I know I raise money with family and friends to begin this, but it's very, very expensive to do clinical trials.
Yeah.
Sometimes these medical devices can cost you even $100 million to do a clinical trials. In drugs and pharma, we have from pharma, you spend over $800 million from one medicine.
Sure.
So here I have a medical device, and I try to do what would be the fastest way, and how can I raise money to get this part. So having this, I raised a lot of money. In fact, last year, from 2016, when I have the organization to put in place, and 2017, we make the company valuated in $100 million. And with that, I raised the money to begin the clinical trials. Wow. And so for me, it was kind of a little cheaper to do right now in Mexico, the clinical trials, but under the guidance of the United States FDA. So the whole standards can do that. But so this is just the beginning, because as we are testing the clinical trials, but now this is just, almost I can say, in the tip of the ice.
Tip of the iceberg, yeah. So Roberto, so the company though that now is you're in India doing trials. Am I correct there? And then you're now in Mexico. That's all one company, NeuroCytonix.
Yes. So the NeuroCytonix, actually, the way we established that is that Dr. Kumar has his organization. Yep. That is his organization. So we joined the ventures that our organization can explore the commercialization around the world for brain diseases. Okay. And so the corporation is a U.S. corporation. So because I have to do clinical trials in Mexico and the future to also commercialize in Mexico, I create a subsidiary of NeuroCytonix US in Mexico. Now it's called NeuroCytonix Mexico. Okay. But because now in India, there are a lot of interest that we already finished studies there, that we need to create NeuroCytonix India. So that's what we're actually working in that context. But Gary, one of the important things for the business is that I think we have to do our headquarters to do more clinical trials, because I only start with the one, children with cerebral palsy. But Alzheimer's is one of the major problems, and we already have evidence that we can help these people with Alzheimer's disease. So we have to do the studies now in the United States. And I have to build the headquarters, the infrastructure, because this is just the beginning of something so big for the future. And the United States, as me as an American, I feel that being also leaders in the world, we have to take the lead in this kind of science of regeneration. And that's why I am right now, my plan is to work with to build this infrastructure for the future.
Awesome. We're going to help with that somehow, Q. You and I are going to go after that. We're going to help them out. We're going to be, his advocates that get the message out, because I got a bigger mouth than he does. You're right there with me. You're not too far off. Between the two of us, we're going to get the word out. I'm serious about that too. But yeah, so when we say this, tell me about what your clinic looks like in India, what it looks like in Mexico, and what you envision in America within the coming years.
Yes. So like in the research that Dr. Kumar has is a small one-side clinical research center. And that's where we have the proof of concept, because, as a neuroscientist and a physician, I have helped to, imagine, I always tell people, it's like Dr. Kumar had invented the computer, and I am helping him to do the software of that computer. So my training of all sciences, and I know how we can do this. So basically, this technology is a technology that has a program that I always tell also people, imagine it's also like a radio, and you have different stations, FM, AM. Yeah. So different stations have different songs and that's how we do different programs. So far I have created 5 programs. We created for Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's, for stroke patients, children with autism, and children with cerebral palsy. So the India was only the proof of concept. That's it. So what we have created in Mexico, I have with the in Monterrey, Mexico, with the third biggest university in Mexico, in Monterrey. They have a building, University Autonomous of Nuevo León. And so we partners with them, and we build over 10,000 square feet. We brought 3 machines. I train all the people, and we have people in the United States who regulates the science, the research science, and they're back and forth United States to Monterrey.
From DC to Monterey.
From DC, from different, we have like 6 people monitor the study in Mexico from the United States.
Okay.
And I have 2 new people from Miami, so they will be helping us from there. So this is a big collaboration about that. And everything is now because of the technology we have, everything you can access into the internet, the platform that we developed for that. So we are very monitored and very close to that. But that's the one research. And one of the things is that we want to build eventually they take care of the machine, you pay the patient 1 hour for 20 days. But the vision for United States is a little different. Because as this technology, imagine, Gary, and this is the dogma that I learned when I was a 16-year-old, and this is the dogma happening in medicine, that the organ that once is destroyed is the brain, cannot repair. Mm-hmm. And now we're changing that question, that we can repair actually. We can regrow neurons with no medicines, no drugs, no vaccines, nothing, no surgery, no transplantation of any tissue, just sending messages to certain cells in the brain to regrow. And so for that, we have to do more understanding of the research, understanding all the science that we know of our human genome in the brain. Now we need to move it into this practical application. And so for that, we have to have a lot of database. And there is a fantastic new technology that we have to create it, to bring it today. So that's why the United States should be the sources of the new future indications for treatment many diseases, people with epilepsy, people with Lou Gehrig's disease, people with schizophrenia, bipolar. I mean, this is just the beginning of something that is very different. I know we know a lot of in the last century, we have made so much improvements of quality of life because of the discoveries in science.
Sure.
But when we question, there is many incurable diseases. And that's why I always said my mission is to cure the incurable.
Okay, let me stop you there, because I love that. I love that slogan. And you know, how old were you when that was your vision? You know, that because I know you walked away from being a professor. You could have been a professor at Harvard, and you've been, right? You could have been a great doctor, right? And your mother wanted you to come home to be the doctor, the village doctor, and she's still not too happy about that you didn't go back and be the village doctor, right? So all these opportunities that you passed by, because in your mind you somehow came up with this. Your goal is to cure the incurable. But about how old were you when that got in your head and you can't think without thinking that? I mean, that's awesome. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah. So I think, Gabriel, the moment when I decided, when I was 16 years old, that my passion is to study the brain and to make the difference. In fact, I thought one day I'm going to transplant the brain. That's what my idea was, transplant the new brain or something like this. But I think as every stage of my career.
Wait a minute, you didn't give up on that idea either, though, did you? Transplant the brain? You don't give up on that.
Who knows? You know, this is the beginning of some things on the future.